You're live. Good morning. Happy New Year. Welcome to those watching on the live stream and to those community members here in the audience. Thank you for joining us. I have Dr. Block and Ms. Brooks with us as coordinators, and we have Dr. Feeney as our liaison in curriculum. Today we will be discussing research in Fort Washington, and we will, without further ado, pass it on to Dr. Feeney. We're looking forward to the conversation.
Great, thank you. Research in Fort Washington, I think when folks hear the term research, it becomes all about the most high-profile research program we have, the Schreiber Social Science, and Mathematics Research Program. We have far more than that, and in terms of what research is about, how it gets touched upon, kids don't just, our students don't arrive at Schreiber with no research skills whatsoever. But there are a number of research experiences that they have, and that's really important to consider. So the goals of research, and when we look at what research is and how tightly it aligns with our portrait of a graduate, I think this is really important. Research, in terms of what it does for critical thinking, hands-on experimentation, helping kids learn how to design, present, elevating their reading, their writing, their skills, showcasing their work, developing that confidence of speaking to strangers, judges about their work, developing academic and personal resilience. That's a big piece. You will fail at research. You will make mistakes. If you're doing a science experiment, you're struggling with a mathematics program, maybe your research isn't your results aren't what you expected in social science research, you've got to figure out what to do with that. That resilience is an important piece. So you compare some of those skills of all of our research programs, those objectives, and you compare it to our portrait of a graduate, it lines up very nicely. As I mentioned, and at a time I want to thank our elementary school principals, middle school principal, Ms. Gavin was extremely helpful in developing this. Dr. Baird, who's here in the audience, was very helpful. I met with the research teachers at the high school. So a lot of support putting this together. Elementary school, we have experiences. Kids start developing, and that's part of the standards in New York State. There are specific research standards that are covered. New York State has put out new investigation programs. They have new next New York State science standards. There are a lot of research based. That's sort of fundamental, age-appropriate research experiences that students are able to work on in their classrooms. We have two programs in our elementary school science program, Project Lead the Way Launch and Science 21. Both of those contain those fundamental research, hands-on experience, where kids are developing that sense of inquiry. That's really important. I should point out that the New York State Elementary Science Investigations, which were rolled out last year, and our students did experience last year at the elementary and the middle school level, those are, age appropriate, once again, inquiry and research experiences. Students have to take those 4 science investigations. They have to complete them in order to take the Science 5 exam, which used to be the Science 4 exam. Now it's the Science 5 exam or the Science 8 exam. So those are now requirements from New York State for all of our students. So they're all experiencing those. At the elementary level, a lot of the research gets done through library, and that's where some of the New York State research standards are hit, from basic practice of good digital citizenship, the beginning of the use of online databases, research sites, citing sources, creating bibliographies. So those fundamental, our librarians at the elementary school, they're critical to working with the teachers, collaborating with them, developing those skills, and helping those students get prepared. Our PEP program covers research as well. They have, whether it's the whole class enrichment units that have topics such as coding, engineering, robotics, forensics, or the core group units, topics such as DNA and genetics, biodiversity, economics, stock market game, all involve that level of research, analysis, communication, all those experiences that are critical for success at higher end research when they get to the high school. Weber also has research experiences, clearly. This is when you're starting to see more and more of research paper, research project in the different classrooms. Pointing out the science as well. Same thing, especially in the science program. You've got the beginnings of that claim evidence reasoning framework, which was rolled out along with the next generation science standards that allow students, they have to make a claim, they have to look for evidence, and then they have to write reasoning or reaction to that claim, the evidence they collected as part of a research process. Did the evidence they collected line up with their claim? Was their claim valid? Yes, no, why? That's sort of that traditional scientific method, scientific process that students work on in the middle school. They learn to distinguish between trusted, reliable sources, unreliable sources, and once again, pointing out those New York State intermediate science investigations that they're completing. We don't wait for grade 8 to complete them. They are completing some of them in grade 7, 6, 7, and 8, but there are 4 of them they need to complete before they get through grade 8. Some of the classroom activities, when the teachers were, responded to where do you do some research. So the type of research that's done, the quality, it varies. We get to that, and that's one of the things we are, working on and looking at, because not every student's going to experience every one of these, but they're going to hit upon historical and cultural studies, biographies, practical life skills, food, culinary exploration. These are research projects, papers, presentations that students will experience at all grade levels during their time at Weber. We have our PEP program at Weber as well. That's the lunchtime one. Research there is geared, especially when they get into the mock trial, which is one of the debate and mock trial. Those are big units. Students have to be able to read, understand, interpret, argue, reason, react during the mock trial. If you haven't seen a mock trial, whether it's at I've seen a ton of them at the high school level, but the middle school ones are great too, and it's great to see the kids work with real judges and be able to react and put forth arguments while in the midst of a presentation and sort of on their feet. So those are good skills to have. So we get to Schreiber. That's what everyone thinks of, I think, when they think of research. And, Schreiber, the first possible experience in any sort of research is an introduction to STEM class course that does exist. It's an elective course for 9th graders. It runs a full-year course, a 2x6 course, so it's not needing as much as a regular English or social studies class. There's an introduction to the materials, the methods for sort of independent study. That's where you're starting to get some of the more formal research processes that need to take place. We're only hitting about, anywhere from 28 to 32 9th graders. They get signed up while they're 8th graders, right? When you do your course selection at Weber. Some of them will drop it in the first, once that's available, take something else, they're interested in something else. This is not a requirement to do any research at Schreiber. It's not a foundational course for all the 10th grade research courses. And when the course was put in place, it was an attempt to create something that would have a broader appeal and more students engaged in it. The students who sign up for the 10th grade course are not necessarily the ones coming from the STEM course at all. So the formal research programs, once again, just as we saw with Weber, our Schreiber classes, right? Whether you're in English, social studies, you will be writing research papers. There will be research experiences. So that continues on if you're not in the formal research programs. But when you get to 10th grade or getting ready to enter 10th grade, this is when you first have the opportunity to participate in a more formal research program, which is designed towards competitions and Regeneron, the names that one typically hears and associates with research programs. Science, mathematics, social science. These are the programs and that do help prepare students for the intensive research far beyond what's conducted anywhere else in the district. It's tough to compare what the objectives of these courses with the research experiences in the other areas. There are some common characteristics. First and foremost, they are competitive programs. As a 9th grader, you have to decide if you're ready to commit to 3 years of research. You have to commit for 10th, 11th, 12th grade. Commit to finding outside mentors, commit to work in a lab, possibly. This all needs to be done when you're a 9th grader and really in January, because the first exam, the first competitive test takes place during midterm weeks. To enter the program, it's a qualifying exam. You do a review of the student GPA. Teacher recommendation, that's not like a college recommendation, it's basically the teacher agreed the student would fit, and they have student interviews. There are 10 students per program per grade, so each year they're bringing on 30 additional students into the research programs, 10 for mathematics, 10 for social science, 10 for science. And that cap has been in place, from my understanding, for at least 20 years.
I've never seen, so I remember this back into the 90s, and I've never seen a class size more than 10.
I will edit this and say at least 30 years.
Thank you for not saying that.
So, so that has been
Forever.
yes, for quite some time. So those courses, the 10th and the 11th and 12th grade courses do provide you with honors credit. The 10th grade does not. With the rationale that they're not quite at that high level of research. We'll see a recommendation down the road for the 10th grade class, but that's the rationale for the existing program. I think this year, I was told they had 167 students apply for the research program. So that's for 30 available slots. And I'm going to correct myself. It wasn't 167 students, because many of the students will apply for all 3. So in terms of unique students, but they had 167 applications. So whether that's 80 or 90 students that are unique, clearly there's a demand to enter this competitive program.
I can tell you that there were almost 160 listed on even just the social science, and those people probably applied for the others, so I think it's over 80.
And how many students in the cohort?
Right. But
Sorry.
they might, we don't know. It's probably over 80. I don't have the unique number of students, but.
I just saw that Mr. Schultz posted.
Yeah, they're 167. That's where I got the 167 number, I thought, and from the social science. So yes, a lot of kids. I am so sorry.
I interrupted, I apologize. My words came out faster than my manners. How many students are in this cohort? Is this the large cohort? This
The
ninth?
current ninth
Ninth
grade, is that your bubble grade?
No, the current 11th grade is the bubble grade. We have just over 400.
I was thinking 400, yeah, I get to some of those percentages in a little bit.
Okay.
And that's a photo of the fair. This is one of the objectives, students presenting at the fair. This is the Schreiber Fair, which is fun. Yeah, I do get to the percentage later on where we are right now.
Yeah, I didn't jump, I didn't peek.
That's okay. Science research, program highlights, it looks sort of similar. That 10th grade fundamentals of research, the participation in research competitions. 11th grade, they develop a draft research proposal. Yep, each of the three, you've got a few, there are a few hallmarks, right? Schreiber Fair, competing in Schreiber Fair, that's an important part. You eventually partner with a senior, so when you're a junior, you're partnering with a senior in the program, they sort of serve as a little mentor to get ready for the Schreiber Fair. And when you're a senior, you're preparing the research for the Regeneron, the Science Talent search. The reason why we know Regeneron doesn't have caps to the number, a lot of the science research programs or the research competitions, you have caps, you're only allocated as a school a certain number. So not everyone can apply to LISA, for example, because, depending on the year, we may only have 4 or 5 slots available. But Regeneron, which evolved from Westinghouse, Intel, what other iterations I'm missing, but that does not have a cap. So that's the target for all of the students in the program. So we will have 30 submissions to Regeneron. Some recent accolades, students have done well. This past year, it says one science one. So we had 5 Regeneron scholars. One of them was a science paper. Science is we do LISEF, and these are just some. There are just so many accolades. Our kids have done very well in the different competitions. Mathematics, same sort of notion in terms of the overall, with math, they've got another little twist in that, the students will take a very competitive mathematics exam each month, just to stay on top and answer that. And the Schreiber kids usually do very well. We've got some of our top mathematics students, they enter these competitions, and they do well. Some of the accolades from mathematics. This year, 2 of the Regenerons were mathematics papers. Social science. You see some of the common themes. A lot of it's about developing research, writing skills in that 10th grade. Looking at some methodology, learning to read articles, research things. This is all core, fundamental, really important research work. But that connection, if you go back at some of the experiences, especially after your junior year, the importance of finding a mentor, working outside, especially through science programs and an outside lab, making those connections. So that's the research program at Schreiber, sort of in a nutshell. So back in 2016, the spring of 2016, after review, I've spoken about PGCD in this committee and in this committee a number of times. There was that's our Professional Growth and Curriculum Development Committee, partnership with the teachers and administrators to review the curriculum in the district. There was a review of the research program at Schreiber, not a K-12 review, but just the Schreiber one. And they did provide some recommendations. If there were no additional resources provided, they said we really got to stick with the 10 students per class enrollment. I will say that there is a lot of logistic work associated with a research program, from the mundane, setting up buses and dealing with, all of those details, entering the competitions, making sure students, parents have signed off on all the forms, making sure the principal signs off on all the forms. There's a lot of detail. It's not as if, hey, let's go and, I'll meet at the competition. No, we give them the bus, permission slip, there's a lot of detail that goes with it. So, the thought being that, right now, 10 students, okay, and the teachers now managing all that detail themselves, okay, we'll stick to the 10. However, if there were a research facilitator, which is what it was called in the review, to oversee the 3 programs, that facilitator could pick up a lot of that work. It makes it a lot easier to expand the program to 15 students per course per grade. There was a recommendation to extend honors credit to 10th grade students in the program who produce an exemplary level research paper. And there was a recommendation to add AP Computer Science as a course co-requisite for students in mathematics research. That recommendation was added, the others were not acted on.
Is AP staff not part of, AP staff was also recommended?
That was added on as well. That wasn't part of the original recommendations, but yes, the recommendation is for stat and computer science for the mathematics kids,
As mandatory courses?
as a recommended co-requisite. If you don't have it, I don't think it means you can't, but that is what's recommended.
So typically, it's really hard to get both of those in, is that thing worked out?
So there's no, so kids might want to do it, but their schedule does not allow it.
Could happen.
Okay.
So, that's where we are, what now? So, my view, and especially if we go back to that first slide and we see how well research and the skills associated with research line up with our portrait of the graduate, which is our North Star, that's where we are heading towards with all of our students. It seems to me that expanding research would be a good thing. Right now, our 3 research programs at Schreiber, they're capped at 90 students. That's about 7.5% of the students in grades 10 through 12. So you're a sophomore, junior, senior, only 7.5% of those kids are getting a high-level research experience. Because that's the only research experience, we are offering, aside from, what happens in the classrooms, but in terms of the more formal research, which it exists. And what I'd liken this to is basically, if we have any runners or soccer players, so if you're a soccer player, all we are offering right now is a travel soccer program that has the weekend showcases that you need to commit to at least once a month and 3 weeks of travel over the summer. That's all we have. And we've got kids to fill that because we may have super talented soccer players, but I suspect we have other soccer players that are solid that either can't compete or don't want to put that in, and should we still provide them with opportunities? We do have that intro to STEM class. It's a small percentage of 9th graders, approximately 7%. So given how research aligns so closely with our portrait, I believe we have an obligation to make formal research, this sort of a research course class, more accessible to more students. And we can do that. But we don't have to do it at a high level, right? There's a way of having a research course that's, not a sort of a travel soccer or state level runner, but a good solid runner. It's accessible. I think everyone should go out running. That's what I believe. Right?
Can I ask why so I see it's only taken by a small percentage of 9th graders. So is it because there's a demand for the class and there's only one section, or is it because?
It's not a huge demand.
Okay, so there's not a huge demand for
Yeah,
that.
there are 2 sections right now. I think 15 to 16 kids per section.
Okay. I mean, are most of those kids applying to the research programs? Is that I would assume that most of them are.
So what I will also say is The introduction to STEM class, it's an elective class that does not have any sort of grade weighting or something like that.
Okay.
So sometimes kids will steer away from those, especially the top level. If you think you're competing, for that bow-sound position, then you're going to be very strategic in the courses you take.
Okay.
And it's 2 by 6.
So that was going to be one of my questions, unless you want to finish and we go back to it. Does that 2 by 6 cause problems with the overall schedule? Like, is there other things that get fit in?
I think ninth graders do tend to have more room in their schedule. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, there's room in the ninth grade schedule.
Right, but what I'm wondering is part of the lack of interest that now that block is kind of quote unquote messed up. So there's no other, can they not do another 2 by 6 to?
I mean, it could go against your phys ed class.
Okay.
And there are other, so there are not a lot of 2 by 6s, but there are others.
And particularly with freshman level courses, since you may only have one level, it means that ninth grade English, for example, they can fit into any one of those sections. So they have the least locked in schedule out of any grade level. So there's an opportunity if students want to be in the course, it's just not highly sought after.
So let me.
Are other electives 4 by 6?
It depends. It depends on which elective. So this would be a half credit course that meets for an entire school year, which is why it's a 2 by 6. There are some other ones that would be a 4 by 6, but only for a single semester. As far as ninth grade, they have the least amount of electives possible out of the entire school because they have the most
All the
foundational requirements.
So I'm just wondering if restructuring how it's offered is another consideration. So,
I don't believe that would increase the desire to take the course.
okay, I'm sorry.
So it sounds like we have a class that is not offering honors, and that is what is scaring a lot of people away from it. If we were to offer it at an honors level, we think that enrollment would double or triple or quadruple.
I think it would increase.
Diplomatic. So one of the values of potentially doing that would be that I'm guessing it is very hard to select students to this very competitive program and have enough data points. But it feels like having a full year ninth grade class where you're actually doing some of the skills would give you yet another data point. And by offering this class in a way that doesn't appeal to many of the students who are applying, it's unclear whether I'm not saying eliminate this class, but I'm saying you could potentially offer a STEM with honors that maybe, that students might be more interested in. Okay.
Sorry.
So here's some possibilities for expanding research opportunities. These are possibilities, right? You can increase support for the program. And I'm just piggybacking in this recommendation off of the PGCD recommendation to have a research coordinator, which personally I actually think makes a lot of sense. Because, being familiar with the amount of work involved, especially when you have these 3 high-end programs and all the competitions, a coordinator does help make everything run a little smoother. A coordinator, although I think the research programs do communicate with each other. If you have a research coordinator in charge of the 3 of them, it's not in any one person's domain, whether it's social studies, mathematics, or science, but that person oversees the 3 of them and can foster and encourage a cooperation that I don't think is not necessarily done on a regular basis, just simply because of the nature of the programs. So taking the burden of all of those logistics off of those teachers, I think piggybacking off of that PGCD recommendation, you go up right away to class sizes of 15. If they can just focus on those 15 students, and they don't have to worry about scheduling the bus or making sure the supplies have been ordered and making sure, worrying about the budgets. But having that research coordinator in charge of all that, that makes a big difference. Now, if we get into 15, that moves us from 90 students in this high-end program after 3 years to 135, and you've jumped from 7.5% of the population of the 10, 11, 12s to just over 11%. So you've expanded in this high-end, which I think is important. I actually think what's more important is finding a way to reach more kids who are not at that high end or don't know they could be at that high end. Listen, I'm trying to imagine a ninth grader in February deciding, yeah, that's for me. I'm gonna commit and I know I can do that. I can imagine ninth grade parents saying that's for you, right? But for a kid to really, if you really want it to be successful, there's gonna be so much internal drive that if they don't know what research is all about and the excitement that can take place within a research program, it's hard to, I think it's hard to imagine what that commitment really looks like. And that's what I think sometimes teachers then get problems because they wind up, of the 10, they really have to chase down all the time, maybe 2, 3 students who really aren't that interested, or their interest fizzles out a little bit. So what I'd love to see is a different research path for students who can't commit to our high-level program, but it needs to be something that is dealing with these same topics within our 10th grade research classes in a serious way and providing that broad foundational research background, which then helps kids in all of their classes. So I said a lot of this, but I think probably if you're going to have that additional demand, you may need an additional faculty member to cover it. Now, what might that look like? It could be rejiggering, reworking, rethinking the interests in class. That could be it. I think part of the problem with a class which was originally developed to have science, technology, the social science, and mathematics, science kind of fell out of it. So right now it's really just for social science and mathematics. Science felt certain things that there wasn't enough time to really focus in. They were cycling among the 4 different areas and preventing any sort of experiment that might take place more than over 8-9 weeks. Sometimes it takes time of a science experiment. So you could rework that. There's also there is a program that's been developed by the College Board and a particular class called AP Seminar. AP Seminar, which was developed probably about, myself, 8-9 years ago, is a part of the AP Capstone Diploma program. And listen, I had times had a lot to say about College Board and some of the things I don't like about College Board, but I like this class, especially the AP Seminar class. This is a class, yes, it's an AP class, but it's probably, in my view, the most approachable AP class they offer. In my previous district, we had a broad range of students taking this AP Seminar course. We had our high-end course kids, we had classified kids. 90% of the work is done in class. So you're not going home from AP Seminar with 2 hours of work. You are doing most of your work in class. There was an AP exam at the end of the year, but you've already arrived at 55% of your grade through 2 projects that you do over the course of the year. One of the projects you do with a group, and one of the projects you do individually. And they are graded by your teacher, in-house, verified by a College Board. You've got a partial score walking into the exam. So this is a class where students are learning all of those fundamentals of research. They learn how to read a research journal. They learn, how to argue a point. They learn how to synthesize information. They learn to work independently, and they learn to collaborate with a group on this research topic. You can offer this, there are a lot of models for offering this course. You can offer it as a standalone. A lot of schools in Long Island offered it as a replacement for their honors 10th grade English course. When we brought this program to my previous district, I wanted it to really be independent of any subject area. We did not do that, but a lot of schools in Long Island did. I think it's about a 50-50 split. But I'm sharing this simply because the College Board, seeing the trend in Long Island, really was a Long Island trend, they actually developed a different version of this course, of the curriculum, called AP Seminar-English. Kid you not, which really surprised me. There is an option for that, but that's one way. You've got a class that would be a draw, because it's an AP class, providing a lot of fundamental, really core research experiences for kids.
What's a yearly class?
That is a year-long, every day, 4 by 6, right?
So it would be a 10th grade AP seminar, 11th grade AP research.
So what I'm
Did I say-
saying, you're skipping way ahead. You're allowed to, I guess, but I'm gonna ask you
I'm
to
saying
respectfully calm down. This is an option. Right? My objective is really to expand research opportunities for the, 390 kids, 370 kids that don't get into the super high research. And not every one of those 370 kids will want to take research, but more kids will benefit from a research experience and might be interested. And we also, I don't know, I worry we're missing kids, right? Who may not think they're any good at research and would not even think to apply to the program, but somewhere in there, there's research, and sometimes you just need to get exposed to it. So this is sort of something that's in there. The seminar course, this is part of a capstone diploma program. You can take it or leave it, the whole program, because they combine AP seminar with AP research. AP research is a class that can be co-seated with another class. And the work they do in that other class can go towards research, the AP research class. Really, the purpose of the AP research class is to produce a paper, which they're doing already in their 11th, 12th grade class. Any kids in my previous district, any student who was applying to the Regeneron program, or a lot of these, they were producing papers, so they were enrolled in AP research. But the goal was really Regeneron. That's only, for us, it was a half credit course. They didn't meet every day. There's a lot of flexibility around AP research. The goal is to write a college level research paper. There is no AP exam at the end of the year, but they need to be able to present and defend their findings and their methodology. If kids take both of those classes and they've taken 4 AP exams and scored 3 or higher on them, they get what's called a capstone diploma. The capstone diploma, you're often not finding out about this. Sometimes you get it at the end of your 11th grade year if you take research in your 10th grade, 11th grade year. Sometimes you get it 12th grade year. It's an external, seal that says, okay, you've done this. The thinking being those AP courses, those are content specific. This is more of a skills methodology that allows you to combine what you're learning in the other courses and integrate that together. You don't have to have it as a diploma program. You can bring just the course in the AP seminar course. Another possibility, there are other formal research experiences that are very popular here in Long Island. We try to incorporate some of those into our programs. National History Day, that's actually something that some kids have done. Piecemeal. We've had students in the social science research program do National History Day competitions. this is an outstanding competition, and especially here in Long Island, where you have a lot of schools that are really committed to it. What students are able to produce and the flexibility, it's not just about a paper. You can do along with the paper, you do a board, you can do a performance, you can do a website, you can do a video, whatever works for you as an individual student or as a group. There's so many ways to compete in National History Day. Each year there's a theme, and your research just has to be along those themes. And, the themes are so broad that, just about anything can fit into it. That's a 6 through 12 program. A lot of middle school students do it. I think we have 1 or 2 middle school students who are interested on their own in doing it, and we do have a teacher who's agreed to work with those students. It's a lot of work. So it takes there are resources that are required, but it can be a tremendous experience. Long Island happens to be one of the most competitive regions, and if you get to that Long Island History Day Fair, which is in usually the first weekend of March, at Hofstra, if you get to that and you get through that, you're on your way to the state and you're in really good shape. There's a strong chance you go on to nationals in Maryland. So that's an exciting opportunity. That's another form of research. How could you implement it? A lot of different ways. You can have it as a separate elective course where they just focus on National History Day work. You can do it as part of a requirement as an honors or main course. You can do it as a lab class, selected to a main course. You can do it as a school club that's connected to the work they have to do. The school librarian, crucial. Social studies department supervisor, crucial. They're really important in the implementation of it. The National History Day work really falls under social studies history. But we've also, to support kids, you may have, we had a student do a dance in my previous district. Hers was a dance, and we had an outside dance come in to do support. We had a port president who does a lot of work with our schools come and work on some of the presentation skills for some of our kids. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done outside of social studies. So as I mentioned, we've had, even at Weber in the past, we had kids competed as part of a club, I believe. And they've had some students do it as part of the social science research, but it's not sort of every year we're going to do a National History Day project. So those are just some possibilities. I'm not sitting here reporting those are the only ways we can expand research. My goal here is really to let's start thinking about ways, and let's think of this as an important part of our plans as we move forward. It aligns so well with our portrait of a graduate. It aligns so well with the sort of skills kids will need, even if they don't go on and do research. So we do have a lot of research experiences in our elementary middle school, but it's going to be surprising to hear. There's not a lot of horizontal or vertical articulation of those experiences. So there's a level of inconsistency. So by the time kids get to Weber, they've had different research experiences. It's okay to have different experiences. One person can do this, but they should all have, sources, bibliographies, those sort of skills. So they'll get through Weber and it's the same thing, right? So by the time those kids get to Schreiber, once again, there's no consistent set. We can't count on the fact that they've had these types of experiences. So we've got these pockets of excellence, and I don't know where kids, whether the elementary, got some outstanding research experience with the librarian, bring parents in, and kids are presenting to their parents on their projects. Great stuff. But that's not happening necessarily everywhere. Schreiber's program, our goal here is not to disband Schreiber's program by any stretch. It's been a successful program. Kids have done well. We want to maintain and we want to strengthen it. And I really believe that if we can expand research opportunities to more students, we will strengthen that program. Kids will go into that program with stronger background skills. It will and you may get kids who otherwise you would not have seen. So if we can expand it, all the better. Right now, we're talking about possibly expanding to 15. It'd be great if we can have even more sections, as long as we have the support. You want to recognize that low ratio is important because of the amount of work associated with those high-end programs. But those high-end programs, that's not all there is to research. There are opportunities for students to do research that don't require them to submit to Regeneron. That's not everything with research. And yeah, research, right. Quote, Bill Gates, Jordan Hurston, yes, they both spoke about research.
Nothing.
Oh, okay, well, he speaks though of research, he might be a fan, but.
I didn't think you were saying anything.
Okay. I think that's
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank
That's
you.
our overview.
Well, there was a lot more in there than I was dreaming of. So thank you for that. And
I'm
as you
sorry you were dreaming of a research presentation for what that's worth.
I dream of curriculum meetings on Thursday nights all the time.
Good Lord.
Who would like to start?
I'm happy to.
Sure.
I had actually started asking if there was consistency in the various schools, and you highlighted that. So I've now changed my question to, what is the source of the inconsistency? Because we've been talking about that for so many years. And is it because the teachers aren't coordinating? Is it because the principals aren't coordinating? Is it because we don't have a director? And how do we fix it? Because it seems that we've been talking about it for so long, it should have been fixed already.
Well, and the first time I've discussed this,
So yes, I know you are still new.
it's still new. I think that there's why the source of inconsistencies. Part of it is, I'll pitch it again, right? I talked about this. We saw our music and our phys ed health, where you see a little more consistency because you have those K-12 directors. It makes a big difference. The coordinating. The job of a principal is huge. At an elementary, a middle, a high school, there are a lot of different pieces going on, and having these curricular experts to help focus and provide that consistency is crucial. So I think that's part of it. New York State has standards, and I think they're hitting the standards, right? So it's not that we're avoiding the research standards, but we could do a better job providing a more consistent experience. And I think if we took what, this school is doing that one and this one and this one, and hey, let's get together and let's talk about how we're approaching it. That can go a long way. There's not a single librarian, it's not a single teacher who doesn't want the best experience for all the students. And if they can see where it fits in, K-12, and if there's a vision for how important the work you're doing in the library is and how that's building on something, that can go a long way. In my previous district, I put a lot of effort. I was an 8 through 12 school. I focused in on research, and it quickly became clear that my efforts on research at my 8 through 12 school, that soon became a district K through 12 research initiative, and that made a huge difference in terms of that articulation. Smaller district, a little easier to do, but it's certainly possible in any district.
I think at one time we were down to a half librarian. It was either part-time or shared among schools, I can't remember. And we're now back up to full staff, so. There's
There's lots of
really-
librarians and guidance
I was
counselors.
gonna say,
Yeah.
Yeah, in my lifetime. So we're running, we should be running on all cylinders.
Right, and that's the Bill Gates fund research, right? That's the funding of research in terms of the librarians, and they take their jobs very seriously, our librarians. But that's part of.
Having been through this experience personally, one of my observations was that the students in the science research and the math research had outside opportunities to hone their math and science skills, outside access, before getting, even in elementary school, so they were part of clubs or did the Hopkins program or had other opportunities for enrichment access that many students don't have. And I'm wondering, and I'm sure that creates some type of inequity. I can't imagine it doesn't, having had the opportunity, for example, to go to Hopkins for a summer, as an elementary school kid or as a middle school kid, or the gifted program, post on Saturdays, I think it was. So, outside of, even outside of school extracurricular opportunities, right? We have science Olympiad in school, we have math Olympiad in school, but outside of school activities. And I'm wondering if there's been any internal review done or thought given to the fact that there are students who automatically have a leg up over students we educate, from 8 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or outside, so even including the club. So just a thought, just to put out there in the universe, I don't know if you have the answer, but some way to level the playing field. I don't know if it's possible. But just where some students may be excluded because they didn't have these other opportunities.
Right. So clearly the district isn't going to start funding, summer experiences at Johns Hopkins. We all know that. But I do think, to your point about clubs and activities, I think that has been something the district has looked on in a variety of ways. And that's going to be a multi-year process, and making sure those are incorporated into our budget and not having to go through the Ed Foundation, which is terrific, but it's part of our operating expenses. I think that by looking, especially when they get through middle school and into that, 9th, 10th grade at Schreiber, you expose more kids within the school day. You provide them with the option of a research class that we can take, 8 to 3 or whatever it is. That's a way of leveling the playing field so that it's not for everyone. I strongly believe that we need to expand our research, and I do think these courses can be made available for everyone. In my previous district, we made it a soft requirement for 10th graders. Every 10th grader was signed up for it, unless, based on the 10th grade schedule, if you were already in, we had an engineering program, you just run out of room in your schedule. So if you're doing engineering or if you were in an art sequence already, you didn't have to, but all other students were signed up for it. And that included needing to speak to kids and parents who were afraid to take an MP course because they'd never taken one, and explaining that and supporting that. And kids found success.
Yeah, because imagining life over 3 years in high school requires a tremendous amount of emotional maturity, academic maturity. Some kids are ready for it, and some kids
No, please, I'm not even ready for it now.
and so it almost is a penalty, right? If you're not there yet, for your phone to the room, because you're not. So I love the idea of offering something that doesn't require that type of foresight and time commitment, not in terms of the amount of time, but the commitment to do it over 3 years. I mean, there are kids who drop out during the course of the 3 years, but that's very rare.
It's a rarity.
It's a rarity. My final question, is there anything in here you've introduced that is budget neutral? Given that we've just had our preliminary state runs and we're not looking at a huge pot of gold at the end of the rainbow to increase staffing?
So the budget.
Moving people around.
Yeah, the budget neutral stuff right now would be, neutral. Listen, aligning the curriculum, working with the libraries at the elementary schools to provide more consistent experiences. Even I think utilizing our Weber librarian more as a hub for research, all that stuff is budget neutral. We've got the personnel. At the previous board meeting, we had pitched a secondary directors, right? So we had talked about one of STEM, that could be STEM and research, right? So you could cover both of those, so.
That was gonna be my question. Can that be part of what you're?
Yes,
So
That would be-
we could consider the what did you say?
secondary chair, secondary director,
As part of the
research coordinator.
research coordinator. Okay, that was one of my questions.
But that's not budget neutral.
Right. But we don't have to have a second person is what I was asking. We can make that.
And, let's be honest, right, let's get it out there. So you start expanding research opportunities, there's a level of a zero-sum game in that, if I'm a 10th grader and I want to take this new research class, whatever it might be, or 9th grade or whatever it is, if I'm taking that, there's something else I'm not taking, that's true. But I think there are enough students with holes in their schedules that they can also just pick up, so it's not totally a zero-sum game, and it may necessitate additional FTEs, resources.
Okay. So I am a social science researcher professionally, and I did the research programs, as did my wife here. We had great experiences, and I want to build on those experiences and what our kids receive here. So my question is related to the secondary research coordinator. That's a non-instructional position?
Yeah,
Would it be like a coordinator position, or would it be someone that has to have a teaching degree that needs?
it would be like a director, sort of like hiring a Kevin Scully or a Schratweiser or.
Okay. So that to me sounds like a relatively expensive way to get another 5 students in each of the programs, and there are 15 students per year. My question is, so I would like you to come back with an option for just additional sections. And then let's do a comparison of doing it through a research coordinator versus just having additional sections of the research program. Because we have talked about this, and what I've heard consistently both from parents and also from administrators is that we have a lot more students applying than we have spots. And most of those students, or many of those students, are qualified, but they're not able to do it because we have a lack of supply. So I want for
Do we
this
have a lack of supplies?
a lack of supply of
A
spots.
lack of
Oh,
seats.
sorry.
A lack of
Yeah.
seats.
Just checking.
Going all economics. Yeah, we have a lack of seats. And so I would like this year's budget to have in it an expansion of the research program by one method or another, and then let us, think about what the priorities of the district are. If you put it in, then we'll have to think about what the costs are. So yeah, there's 2 different pathways through either additional sections or the research coordinator. Thank you.
Well, we
Let's
kind
bring
of,
this to the full board as a recommendation, and make sure the full board is on board with that.
Okay. That's fine, I'm happy to, okay, well, you don't work with that
Yes,
directive?
I would.
Okay, and that, you don't go with that directive?
I think there's, as he said, there's a lot of ways to skin this cat, so I'm not sure I have the expertise to say it should go in this direction, so
So,
I'm not, no,
Okay,
I don't know that I have the
okay. Rachel,
expertise to say.
are you on board with this?
So I agree with Nan. I would like to hear a recommendation. I don't think the board should step in and say, we want you to do it this way instead. I absolutely want to see it expanded. And one of my questions was going to be, what's the size of our neighboring district's program? Because it sounds like we're all on the same page that there are more students who are capable of this than is being done. But I've never seen this PGCD report or even knew it existed. And I think that we have to have a much more detailed conversation about what the cost would be to do it. But I agree with
All
you,
I
it's
ask
a board
for
decision
is-
to figure out how to pay for
All
it.
I ask for is the cost. So let me just share a little bit of the history, which is that the science program started in the early 80s, so that was 10 students per year. The math student program started in the very late 80s, that brought it up to 20 students per year. And then the social science program started in the late 90s. And in the 28 years in between the late 90s and right now, we've had no expansion of the program. And so I think it is time for an expansion of the program. We hear that there's demand from students. So I'm concerned that I'm getting hemming and hawing over a directive
So-
to the administrators. I'm not finished. Over a directive to the administrators to simply present what it would look like to pass this. In other words, I'm not saying that we're bringing it to the board, I'm asking the administrators to play this out, because right now, these possibilities are very squishy. They're fine, and I like them, but I'm asking for a real development so that we can pass it as part of the budget this year. And so, would you like to see that, or do you think that we need to still
So
talk about it?
first off, I'm not hemming and hawing, I'm trying to appropriately act as board member, and I think Nan is as well. I don't think we should step into the shoes of the educators. I think it's important to note that this conversation was amazing. We've never had a conversation like this, and this is the next in line of many conversations that we've had since we've had an administrative turnover, where we're finally talking about these things that have been stuck in inertia for years and years and years. So I think rather than jumping on the administration, I think that we should be thankful for this and say, this is great, we support expanding this. Next, come back to us and tell us what's the cost of this and what does it look like? I mean, it sounds to me like Dr. Feeney, and so I'm assuming Dr. Bear too, because I know the two of you are working hand in glove on stuff like this, are in favor of expanding even further at some point if we could do it. So I'm
That's what I
100% on
just-
board for,
Okay,
yes, let's expand, but I don't think that it needs to be accusatory to your fellow board members or our administration.
I'm not being accusatory, I'm asking if what we want is a formal proposal that looks like, here is what an expansion would look like and here's what it would cost. And you either want a formal proposal so that we can make a formal decision, or you don't want a formal proposal because you think the administration should be focused on other things.
If, forgive me if I misunderstood you, when you turned to me and Devin asked, the conversation I heard was, I would like to see it expanded by sections, and that sounded like a directive to me, and I thought that's what you were asking me to get on board for, because I'm not getting on board for that.
And that's fine.
Okay.
What I would like is to see a formal proposal of what methods of expansion would look like and what the budgetary implications are. And this
Different
is,
question.
this is a preliminary version of that. This is like an outline of what that would look like. This is like a mission statement. And I want something that that we can either put in the budget
That's
if you agree with it. Yeah. or-
Can I ask, just for some clarification?
Sure.
When you talk about expansion, is your interest right now solely on that high-end sort of Regeneron target expansion?
So I would love to see that. Plus, I did like the idea in proposal number 2,
Possibility.
because, possibility number 2, because they did not seem at all mutually exclusive. It seemed like there's no reason that you can do, other than money, there's no reason you can't do both.
I agree.
I think perhaps the way to solve this is to get together with Dr. Hines and Dr. Bear and figure out for this year, what is within the realm of possibility to present to the board on your end, and come back to the board in very budgetary, concrete ways, and say, this is what we think is achievable based on what we know internally, and this is what we would suggest and propose. And that way, I think it's not driven by 1 or 2 board members saying, this is what we want, but by administration taking a hard internal look and saying, this is what we think is feasible, possible, educationally sound, and so forth.
This needs to be a longer term,
Yeah, maybe.
right? It's not just, ooh, we upped it this year. I think you're looking at a lot of possibilities, because this should be a concerted K-12 plan, and we build.
So, and those are both good points, and I do want to, there's some things that can be done a little easier and than others. One of the challenges, of course, already in the selection process for next year, so they're already in the selection process for the 10-10-10. So that would have to be a very quick action if we wanted to impact this coming year. We've approved the new courses for next year at Schreiber, so that would almost preclude the addition of a new one. So this is long-term. But the work to get it right, because what worked in my previous district would not necessarily work here. right? And I think it's worth visiting other districts. How have they implemented capstone, for example? What does that look like? Will it enhance? Does it take away from the current program, the Highland? These are all things that would need to be explored and looked at. So the objective will remain expanding this, whether that gets done right away. If we wanted to go up to say 15, you're not doing that in 11th and 12th grade, right? Because that 10th grade, the current 10th grade crop will go on with their 10. It would be introducing it early for 10th grade. Is it still possible to hit that? Yeah, we probably still have a little bit of time for that.
So in terms of the capstone, would that just be shifting staff and potentially being budget neutral aside from like PD costs?
There's definite PD costs because there's a required 5-day training to teach that course. So that depends, and that's where I got into the zero-sum game conversation earlier. There's a level of zero-sum in that if you're taking the AP seminar course, then perhaps you're not taking some other class. And it also depends on the model, because if you use the AP seminar-English model, that's almost either an additional section or a different way of looking at the 10th grade honors English course. So, you could conceivably run both concurrently or depending on, so it really depends on how we adopt it, if we adopt it, right? That's it, but that's going to be a conversation. And, yeah, so that's not clear. I do think you may get more kids who are in free periods who may take this. Other kids might not take another elective, so it's not as easy as saying, well, I'm not going to take this elective in this section, in this department, and instead I want to do capstone, but, if you've lost a section in, your music department, I'm not suggesting that that teacher isn't necessarily the one who can teach the seminar. So it's a little more complicated.
Did you?
That was the end of my, if you want to call it questions, that's the end of my issue.
Okay. So I have a couple, and we have to obviously get to the community. I felt a low level of enthusiasm for the 9th grade research course. Is it a high dropout rate? You drop that little bit in and students drop it?
Kids leave the course. What they sign up for and what they wind up with, yeah.
So are we finding that this is a valuable offering? Should we be considering another choice?
I think as we are looking at research opportunities and enhancing the research, that's a course worth reviewing. Not necessarily saying it's no longer needed. In my previous district, we had an intro to social science research. We had an intro to STEM course kids could take early on. And we still have the AP seminar course that they feed into. One was not a requirement or a prerequisite to the next, but it did help kids.
I'm not sure I was following the honors credit conundrum of 10th grade.
What was explained to me is and then that was in the recommendation that the reason why the 10th grade is not an honors designated course right now is because the students aren't, even though they're the top of the, right, you've picked and that it's a competitive to get into, they haven't produced things that are honors level work yet. That is the
So I think
rationale.
what you said is that at the end of that course, they felt that the 10th graders.
That was one of the PGCD recommendations to make it honors credit, but that has not been put in place.
Okay.
If they produce a paper, just
They're all producing.
and of honors, but to realize it, just all of a sudden that looks like a lot like our honors projects that, well, some will get it, some will not. I'd rather have everyone in the course, design a course, you've got these kids who are extremely motivated and bright, and it seems you could find a way to design a course so it's honors level for everyone. It would seem. But I'm
So
not
are
teaching
you
that
in
course.
support support of it being an honors
I
level?
think it's gotta be a conversation with the honors program as we're expanding and providing other opportunities, how that might impact the honors. What I don't want is to, negatively impact the cycle, the sequence we have right now. I think it's worked so well for our high-end kids. We want to continue that. We want to enhance those research opportunities for other kids. So it may need to be honors, it may not. That's not, I think we need to review and look closely. It depends on how we impact it. One of the, the teacher said, if you had a 10th grade AP course versus a 10th grade non-honors course for the high-end kids, that would be very strange.
Yeah.
Can I interject for a moment?
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Am I correct that the work that the students are ultimately presenting in the competitions, the Generon and LICEF and all, the seeds of that start in 10th grade. In other words, they're starting
In
their
an
work
ideal
on it,
world, yeah.
and it's culminating. The same topic, the same paper is a culmination process,
Ideally, yes.
ideally, right? So they're not developing something in 10th grade, all of a sudden in 12th grade, they switch it entirely for Regeneron, because if you look, the kids who are in Regeneron now have already presented, the 12th graders have already presented.
Historically, they did different projects every year, right?
Yes,
So you
so
can-
even if they have started a project at the end of 11th grade, let's say, and carried that into 12th grade, that would not be the project that they were doing in 10th grade. So it is not a 3-year cumulative project, but it's a 3-year cumulative process.
Okay.
But there is a project prepared in 10th grade.
They are working on
Yes.
research, it's just more of a preliminary process. So they would still be going through the IRB process, which the principal of the building heads the IRB committee. And it's
IRB meaning,
the institutional
Review
review board.
board.
So looking over methodology, what their study is, the scope, the participants, all of that. So I actually am reading every single one of their papers that they prepared to that point. And they are different projects, and they end up coming in again once they have their 11th grade, 12th grade projects for their IRB approval, and they're different projects.
so my question then is, why must the honors credit rely on whether there is some type of a paper at the end? Why isn't it looking at the process these students are going through in 10th grade? Why is that not being considered
So
honors level work?
that is what I mentioned a few moments ago. I don't disagree with that assessment. It would seem to me we have a 10th grade English course that, we said this is going to be a different level course. Everyone in this course, it's a different enough curriculum, program, process, skills-based, that everyone will receive honors credit. We put that in place this year. It would seem to me one can design a course so that it has a set of expectations and outcomes so that everyone should be able to receive the honors. But, this is, a lot of this stuff predates me. I mean, some of this was in place like 100 years ago, right? That's what you said earlier. So.
Work in progress. I'm sorry, I was.
No, so let me just circle back. So you had 3 possibilities that you presented. Dr. Black wanted one possibility with information and costs. So let me make sure I'm getting this right from 3, potentially 4 of us here. Would we be asking for your recommendations potentially for this budget season for the first steps in your vision for where research goes for the district?
Right, so I think what is.
Did I say that right?
Way better than how I said it, thank you.
Right. If it's also important, right? I'm presenting mine, clearly I work with building principals. This has to be a shared vision. At the end of the day, I'm not teaching any of these classes, right? So we need to make sure that everybody is on board in seeing that. There's a lot of concern when someone comes in and starts sort of shaking up something that's been in place for anywhere from 90 to 100 years, right? So, that's really an important piece, and it's something we don't want to ignore. But there are some things that possibly could get done quicker. Now, you had talked about maybe 2 sections. Let's have 2 sections of each of these.
Adding sections should roughly go back.
Should, you saying?
I think of all the things.
If you were to have 2 sections of 10 for each of those, but that is an FTE, significant.
For sure, for sure.
Because, in terms of fixes that are budget neutral, whether you add a second section or instead you have a research coordinator that oversees it, that could also oversee other things and multiple ways. So there will be something that, if you're running 2 sections of each, that has, that definitely will require additional staffing. And
For sure.
that would actually in some ways possibly be a little challenging because to find that one section, you're increasing class sizes in others, and I don't think there's a department right now that can afford that class sizes increase because there's some that are deep. So it all depends. We can look, we'll review, we'll continue to look on this. The important part of this is getting that conversation that will be sustained, that research is important, and expanding it, I think, is not just important, but I think it aligns so tightly with our portrait of a graduate that, we almost have a requirement, so, in my opinion.
With all due respect to the current administrators who are here, my inclination generally is to add instructional staff and not non-instructional staff, so my preference is
Understood.
in that direction.
So, ready to open it?
Thank you. So can I make a suggestion? What I'm hearing.
I'm going to say no.
Well, I just try to at least phrase it correctly. So, what I'm hearing from you, and correct me if I'm wrong, is there are some changes we could make more quickly. And reading between your lines, I'm hearing we could go up to 15 students if we take the non-instructional elements away from the teachers who are currently teaching it. And that's a change that we could potentially make immediately. So I think the committee discussed that because that would be a good thing, I think. I think we're all on board that it needs to be expanded, and it seems to me we have additional staff in the curriculum department. It sounds like it doesn't have to be its own staff person. If we can figure out a way to do that, I think we're soon enough to do that for next year. Adding additional class sections is very problematic because we're already in planning phases for next year and it involves additional teachers and that's more complicated. So the committee is the one making the recommendation to the board. I would be in favor of making the recommendation to make that immediate change for this year because we're like right at the wire. We can discuss
The
Tuesday
coordinator
night.
is a director though.
What?
The coordinator is a new director level position.
But what I heard was Nan asked if it had to be a separate person, and it doesn't. It could go along with, it could go into the job description of a staff person who does other things.
Right, but he was describing it as the new STEM director.
It's a new hire.
It's a new hire. If we do the STEM director, I would love to hear other options. We have other staff people in the curriculum department right now that we used to have, right? I don't know that we clearly have
That's a
to
good point.
still discuss the new STEM director, but I think if I were on the committee, what I would love to hear is Tuesday night, where could this set of responsibilities go? And we could expand each of these classes to 15, which is still a reasonable class size. And we've improved something immediately that's been ignored for a long time, which I'm sure Dr. Feeney is getting used to doing because we have a lot of that stuff here.
But I don't know about Tuesday night, but that's why I said to look internally and see what it is between you and Dr. Bear and Dr. Hines to see what's feasible. Because there is a lot that goes on behind the scenes for every student with these competitions.
Fortunately, we have meetings every 2 weeks, so it doesn't have to
Right,
be
it
this
doesn't have to be
Tuesday,
right,
it could be 2 weeks
right,
after
2
that.
weeks, yeah.
I only said Tuesday because I know
Fortunately for us.
the process has just started. So we have to be mindful of the fact that it needs to be fast,
Totally
right?
agree. And the 15 is just for the rising 10th graders. It is not for, it's not for rising juniors or rising seniors.
That's true too, so it would be
An incremental.
incremental and
It's an additional
we'd be
15
doing it
children.
for this year and solving down the line, there may need to be other things in place for down the line. I think it's something the committee should discuss about whether they want to recommend. I have a couple other questions. Do you want them? So I've already mentioned, I've never heard of this PGCD recommendation or had the report, so thank you for talking about it.
Yep.
I think it's important to have this stuff out, in public. So I sort of asked in passing, but rhetorically, about how large these programs are in neighboring districts. I'm under the impression that the research programs that look like our competitive research programs are larger in a lot of our neighboring districts. Is that true to your
Yes.
knowledge? Okay. And by the way, I'm focusing on that question, but I think it's great that you're looking at expanding research opportunities for everybody, because I think we need to serve the students who are capable of doing this high-level research in high school, but it's something that all the kids need to be learning about and have opportunities for too.
We can
It
do
doesn't.
Yeah.
Yes, we can do both.
Yes.
I don't think it's an either or.
I
We
was-
can do both.
If I can interject, I was going to ask, do we know why the programs are larger in other districts? Given that we are one of the larger districts of our neighboring districts, we know why they're larger, and are there things that Port Washington has that those districts don't have? Is there, again, is there a balance? Is there a,
Is there a trade-off or are we
Is there a
just stuck in the
trade-off?
mud?
oh, right,
The very strict constraints on the program is unlike what you'll see in other schools, in other programs. That's relatively unique. That was new to me.
Is it a budgetary issue because we're funding, because it all comes down, most of it always comes down to budget, so is it because we're funding other things? Is it,
I'm not sure I understand what
There's
strict
no
constraints are. What does that mean?
In terms of the caps, that 10-10-10,
Oh, okay.
that 10-10-10.
Is it because they have the support staff that we don't have here?
So, like even our research teachers are not dedicated research teachers, right? They also teach other sections of other courses, which is great. And that's been my experience in other schools as well. I think schools have different philosophies. Districts will have different philosophies vis-a-vis research. And one philosophy is widen net, capture as many kids as you can, and you can then see who are really those dedicated ones, and you start focusing, resources, specialized classes, programs on those kids. But first, you want to have a huge net and capture as many. That's been my experience in my previous districts. Another philosophy is, no, this is a program really that, is for just high-end kids, and you have to focus and really work and set all these hurdles on. So when this stuff, these programs were established, it was not uncommon to have hurdles, right? To get into an AP class, you have to do X, Y, Z. You weren't just allowed to take one. So I think that was pretty common. Those sort of barriers have come down a lot. And they've come down in Port and other areas. You don't have to jump through X, Y, Z hoops to take an AP course. But they've stayed as pretty high barriers for science research, for the research programs. So there's a philosophy, and there isn't the philosophy here does not appear to be we want to capture as many kids as possible to get them excited about research and then see who gets really excited. That seems to be.
sorry, I just wanted to follow up.
It's okay.
Which would not be odd given when this program started. That was pretty typical of way back then. And I think we've
Just hasn't
evolved.
evolved.
We've evolved as educators to try to capture everyone. And I think Listen, I think what I like about Ford and where we're moving towards is this notion that we want to provide as many experiences as possible, but we also want to provide some of these like CT experiences, because not everyone has to go into science research or Harvard, Yale, Princeton, whatever it may be. You know, others should have, and we want to support them. So that level of support, I like that that's the direction we're heading, and that's very appealing.
That was a hard question for you to answer. That was very well answered.
Thank you.
So I have another question about the AP seminar, and AP capstone program.
Yes.
I wasn't familiar with it before.
Sure.
I know there's all this stereotyping that goes into different APs and what colleges like, and you know, what's perceived as an easy one and a hard one, and will this help you, will this not help you? What's the reputation of this AP seminar program? Is it one that would be helpful to our students in terms of, it sounds like in terms of the content, we think it would be potentially helpful to them. Is it something that's a good thing for them to do in their trajectory for post-graduation pathways?
I have a lot of issues with College Board and the chasing for APs and so on and so forth. I'm also a believer that we should not have barriers for kids taking APs, right? And those
Great.
two can exist concurrently. So, as someone who brought this to, because it's a relatively new course, and when I learned about it, I was excited about it. Seeing it implemented only reinforced that excitement. My home district does not offer this program. Earlier this year, my youngest is a senior, and he says, you know, I've got some friends who have taken this course. I really wish I had been able to take it. I wish my, SciOps had offered it. The AP seminar course is really a remarkable course. I have seen, as I said earlier, kids who have never taken an AP. That was their first AP. They would have never taken one unless they were, soft forced to take it. It was a soft requirement for us. It wasn't a total requirement, and you didn't have to take it. But we really wanted to encourage students to take it. And we had students who were successful in it. It's just incredible work that they were doing. Classified students and our high-end kids. It was a feeder to our high-end research. We had kids go there and work on stuff, and it made an impact in their other academic courses, their other AP classes, and if they went on to the high-end research, it made an impact. So I've liked it. A lot of schools have adopted it in Long Island, and it's been successful by and large.
I mean, it's interesting to hear you describe it because it sounds even more compelling to me now, because it sounds like it's really a skill AP course.
They teach skills. That's exactly
Not an
it.
intense content course that a student might not be up
You
to.
are learning skills, and 85 to 90% of the work is done in class. So you're not lugging home an AP book like this and having to read and annotate for, an hour, 2 hours. That's not the kind of course it is. It's, I described it in my previous district as a very approachable AP course, probably the most approachable and accessible one.
It's interesting, I heard you say classified students, but, when you think about 90% of the work being done in class too, it also means it's potentially accessible to our students who have to work, right? Who have financial pressures and might not be able to commit to certain AP classes because they actually just don't have the time after school to commit to the study. But that's great. I think I have one more, and I'll let you open it up. No, that's it. I'm gonna leave it there. I think Anna asked my other question.
Oh, mine's very easy. I know that a lot of the focus, rightfully so, has been on really secondary. It was just soft comments on the elementary level. Sandra, co-president of SEPTA, I will email my SEPTA specific questions. I know people have questions here, but for consistency across the elementary schools, libraries, with an inclusive range of books for all students, especially important, as you noted, elementary schools research is heavily based on the school library. When was the last audit by yourself or an administrator or even the PGCD committee of the book selections across all elementary schools? I would like to see what steps your office is taking to elevate the consistency amongst elementary schools, not just in book selection, but in instruction, which may be budget neutral.
So I'm not aware of the last time there was a district-wide book selection audit. That's you're getting into areas little different than just the research focus, the library having those research focused ones. Whether it's using an online database or how to cite sources, those are sort of the skills based. I think making sure the books are accessible. I know that within my office, that's part of what Dr. Pernod does work with our elementary school librarians and tries to get sort of a common thing, but I don't know if there's been specifically a book audit per se.
That was one of them.
Is that ever done?
I don't know. I'm not familiar with that. I can look into that,
It's
but
a question we ask internally.
Okay, just really.
I just had a question about the tests that are involved in this selection process for research. I hear from parents there are multiple tests that a child would have to take in their selection to get through like all the hurdles.
Mhm.
And test taking skills and research skills seem to not be that closely connected. So I'm wondering if that came about just like another like reading out process, or if there's like some like useful information that's coming from these tests, or how like I'm surprised. I understand like even the interview to talk to students because there's a lot of like self motivation and just certain like personal qualities of like determination to get you through those 3 years that you can glean from an interview. But I'm surprised that there's multiple tests that a student would have to take to get into the program.
Did you want to respond?
So what I will say, I think there is limited information that can be gleaned from a number on a piece of paper. I think, as you alluded to, the interview was probably more revealing and very powerful, and looking at what courses the student has had can be helpful as well. I think these are systems that have been in place for a long time.
So to piggyback on that, did your previous district do tests as well, entry tests?
I mean, philosophically, I am a believer if a student wants to take something, he or she should be allowed to take it.
Okay.
So we did not have tests or any sort of criteria like that for students. Yet sometimes there are course prerequisites. You want to make sure they have a certain amount of knowledge. We want to make sure they've taken science courses if they're into science research. But no, no, we did not have any sort of GPA or testing requirement for kids.
Interesting.
Thank you. I'm very happy that this is finally coming to the discussion of the board, so thank you for bringing this in. On a couple of things that are, I have questions about, especially with the AP seminar course. Would this course be only limited if it was implemented to kids that are not in the higher level research, or would it take the place of the 10th grade research program? Because the concern is if you have a course that's on your transcript as an AP course versus a course that's on your transcript that is a 10H type course in research. From a college looking down perspective of just one for the college classes, sometimes the AP courses are really high. So are we going to be coaching our high level research program because kids want to now be in the AP program?
Right. So you are like at least half a light year ahead of where we are right now. So I will also say respectfully, calm down. You have us already implementing this program, and it's like
We're in it and we're 5 years ahead. That's where I am.
these are possibilities, how that gets implemented, and I want to reiterate a point that you brought up. We are not looking to destroy our high-end programs, right? I firmly believe we can expand research opportunities in a way that actually enhances it and provides a greater pool of strong students who like research. So I agree, the reality of AP humana versus a just regular course, for students, transcripts, yeah, we live in this world.
Yeah.
And we need to make decisions based on this world. But one does not preclude the others, and we can find, there are a lot of smart people here. The issue is, it's scary to make changes, and people get worried, and sometimes it's hard to see where one might head. So we have to make sure we're doing a good job articulating where we want to go, what our objectives are. My objective is not to destroy our research program at all. I hope that comes across clear. My objective is to provide more students with the sort of research experience, especially they're seeing at the 10th grade level. I think those foundational courses in the 3 domains, a lot of good stuff happens. And is there a way to provide, maybe it is AP seminar, maybe it's something else. Those are conversations that we can figure out. But my goal is to expand research for more kids. Okay.
I have one comment as well for the Intro to STEM program.
Yes.
I think Dr. Block has said maybe make that into an honors course as elective. Another option, a suggestion from, is rather than making it an honors course, you could make it a prerequisite course. If you want to travel into, because I don't respectfully slapping an honors on a course that not necessarily should be honors could have repercussions to future courses, and fear from kids that don't necessarily want to do something that says honors. They might want to rather say, hey, I want to check it out. It's a prerequisite if I want to do something that is in future research related.
So now, I'm an 8th grader at Weber. It's February, and I need to say, oh, I have to take this course, because if I don't take this course, no soup for me.
Or a prerequisite for everyone.
A requirement is what that's called.
If we are talking about expanding research for all, and the opportunity of research may be something that some kids have to be.
I'm concerned about, it's already a massive 3-year commitment, and I don't want to discourage even more students who are supposed to know by 8th grade that this is their path, right? It might be a
But
little.
we don't already know, like kindergarten.
Yeah.
For those who travel at light speed, perhaps. For us mere mortals, no.
Jessica, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Comment and a question. So, first, what I've heard in this conversation, one thing that I think has been implicit but not explicit is that an expansion of research opportunities allows kids who don't have quant brains to participate in this in a meaningful way, right? Because our 3 higher order research programs are, even social sciences, sociology is a quantitative field of study, quantitative and qualitative, but you still have to take AP statistics to be in the social science research program. So I guess maybe it's also a clarification, does this expand, do the pathways that you're exploring expand opportunities for humanities-centered students in a meaningful way? I'm thinking it seems that way in the AP.
The vast majority of research projects I saw with the AP seminar were social science type ones.
Okay.
So it's right on target.
Okay.
You're learning skills, right? And that's critical.
Right.
This certainly and I'm sorry, I interrupted
No,
you before you finished. But, that's a skills-based course, and those skills transfer to to social science research, mathematics research, right? It's skills-based, and most of the kids were picking projects that were social science related.
Gotcha. Okay. So, and I think I come at this from a slightly different perspective as a journalist. Long form narrative, nonfiction, investigative journalism are all forms of very deep research where you have to have a quantitative understanding, numbers for journos, but you don't have to take AP statistics to be effective in those realms of research. And I wonder if within these pathways there are opportunities for those students who have passions, who have talents, who may not be able to do the deep dive into AP stats or have their brains work in a different way to give them access to.
It's not.
AP stats recommended.
It's recommended.
Recommended, okay, soft requirement recommended.
In my experience with the AP seminar, for example, no, you didn't, there was actually no mathematics required.
Okay, and it's multidisciplinary, you
Yeah.
can study, you can do a
You can do
research
whatever you
project,
want.
you can do language, and
Correct.
complet, or
Correct.
whatever it is.
We had
you're supposed to do.
students studying work connected to prisons, connected to, just really a lot of social science topics. Yeah, so there was no mathematics requirement in my previous district. I know Dr. Barrett in her previous district had experience with the AP seminar course. I don't know if you had mathematics requirements there.
We did not. Most of the research was in science or in social science. Math was a much smaller program. There were not requirements, though we did find that many of the students who were, especially on the science side, were already taking Calc PC, were taking AP Stats, were already on that track. And the social science side, because there was a capstone element to it, they had those 3 years that by their last year, they were getting those research skills underneath and the coding and any amount of statistical testing that they would need, they would get it through that program.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure we are not undervaluing our humanities students and also undervaluing the value of primary research. I hear a lot about secondary research in these discussions. Interviewing skills are really important for life. So, and I understand that they may be incorporated into some of this, but as a humanities person, that's.
Are you familiar with National History Day?
Yes, so I was very
There's some-
pleased, I was very pleased to see National History Day.
There's an interview, I mean,
Oral history.
my students interview members of the Central Park Five way back, before any of those documentaries came out, 12, 15 years ago. It's incredible, some of the interviews they've landed, so yeah,
And the variety of formats that are available to them to
Correct.
deliver their
so I
research.
really like National History Day.
So I was very pleased to see that, and I would love to see more, a pursuit of, or an exploration of more opportunities like that. Even things like a debate with forensics club starting in Weber, minimal budget implication, but a really powerful skill for these kids to start developing who aren't in tech worker. It's common. Question around the pathway that involves a new director hire.
Mhm.
Traditionally, the way I've seen it in organizations, when you are trying to offload administrative tasks from a highly qualified person, you're doing that through leverage. You're getting somebody who can handle ordering supplies, scheduling buses, not an upskill, right? Not somebody who has a higher level of skills and costs more to employ to do those things. So I'm just kind of trying to get my head around, what does that job really look like, and where do our teachers who are actually doing the work of advising the research get leverage? Do they get the leverage from this very highly skilled person?
So it is helpful, especially when we have 3 high-end programs, the way we do here in a large school, to have one point of contact for all of these programs. That does make a difference. I am not intimating that we need a single administrative position only for our research. This is something that in my previous district, it was science and research, but the research wasn't just science research. She worked and coordinated the social science, mathematics, as well as the science, was the point person for all of these competitions, and that does make a difference. So that's sort of what you get out of it. You want someone who is familiar, would not suggest someone who has no background in any of this stuff, because being able to work with students and help direct their research is helpful. You're not going to find someone who will understand all of the papers. As Dr. Barrett, I used to read through my students' papers, and many of them were learning experiences, and some of these science ones, I just said, where are you getting all this? How? I mean, I was just dazzled. So that's where you would get some of the assistance and the leverage that.
Yes, I want to thank Dr. Kinney for a great presentation. I totally echo what Rachel said. You bring up these meetings, the meetings, at a much higher level than in 17 years that I had been in this district. I've never said, so thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Block, second point, I like Dr. Block, he makes some great points. I agree with a lot of them. You have to be.
Sensing a butt. Sensing a butt.
It's a comment.
That's okay.
Not about, it's just for people who have not been in education. Education sometimes is like acting. I can act. I look at a movie, I can do that to myself. But there is, I don't know if you call it that, it's like an art, science. That is the old myth, right? Don't hire too many administrators, put in money in teaching stuff. You have to be careful, because you do need, especially the instructional supervision, it's very important that directors will bring. Obviously, directors do not bring only instructional supervision, but other things. I am one in Port Washington, because we're not a poor district, to spend more money on giving that director more help, more assistance to do the job and do it well, because it's very important. Instruction is the bloodline of the district. Without good instruction, we can implement everything you want to, it's not going to work. And the other thing is that, third point and final point is, I hear a board member saying that they didn't even know that the PGCD meant what they said. That should be, in my opinion, corrected. The Board of Education should know everything that is going on, and that is not micromanagement. Board of Education is charged with everything. They should at least be aware this is going on.
So to be clear, this was a report from 2016,
Oh,
so it's very, very old. It still obviously had a lot of quality recommendations that Dr. Feeney referenced. And we are currently working on making past PGCD reports available to board members. That has literally been a part of Dr. Feeney's work since he arrived, along with the other 100 things he's been doing. So it is very much on our minds as board members.
And I will add in, if you looked at my end of year presentation, this was my beginning of year presentation, I talk very specifically about what active committees are taking place within PGCD as a way of appraising not just the board, but the community. It's not a secret, society, it's not skull and bones or whatever. It's right? So, I could not agree more. Don't fault, listen, I finally digitized all of the reports. I now have all of the recommendations since since 1971 was some of the first ones. So we're working on making the reports. I've got at least the recommendations in a list form. We're making the reports. We'll get that so people can look back. But current work, I'm discussing as often as I can.
that would be a great area of research, social research on the PGCD.
This
This gives
committee,
you an oral history over the last 50
Right.
years.
This has been Nan's pet project
Yeah.
for years.
It's what she dreams about.
I do. So,
It's in the works.
to round out today, I also wanted to reiterate that I love the available ways that students can participate in that the National History Day, where they have a variety of ways to present their ability and their understanding. I would love to see that adopted across lots of ways that our children perform and present their understanding. So I think that's a great model.
Aspirational, not directive.
That's a great model that is great
Thank you.
to see. And another thought, but it escaped me. It might have been PGCD. We are over again. You thought this was going to be a potentially short one.
I think I said that.
Yes, so we
Shame
are
on
way
me.
over. Unfortunately, we will
We have a
sadly
meeting in a few weeks.
skip. Yes, we will be back very shortly. And I think we need to dedicate some old business, just
Yes,
like
that's
to,
our point.
because we keep skipping old business,
So,
and I apologize.
The
for
next
that.
one will be on AI, so that should actually be shorter, just sort of an overview and some of the direction and the district is heading in, some of the direction I think the board should head in. and some examples and how we're using it right now. So that should be a shorter presentation.
Okay, so to assure the
We'll cover some
community,
old
we will
business.
cover old business in more length next time. I apologize once again for that, but this was a really important and valuable conversation for the board and for the community.
And the next date is when?
The next date is February 16th at 10:30 a.m. here, and it is AI in the classroom. And we look forward, what we didn't decide on is, will we get recommendations that you brought here to that meeting? Will it go to the entire board in an evening meeting?
Like this?
Yes.
I think that's part of what was suggested, just trying to tighten up a little bit the direction we want to go in order to expand it in the immediate as well as long term.
Okay, well, will you discuss that at the next meeting or in an evening meeting? Which way can the community expect it, or and the board?
I'm not sure.
Okay, we will keep you posted.
I would target the mid-February board meeting, not the one on Tuesday.
Right, as a discussion at the board,
As a discussion.
At the board
when we
meeting.
get to the curriculum section.
Because we would have to go in this year's budget, and so.
Okay,
that's- yeah.
so that's when we'll expect to
Okay.
hear your recommendations. I just wanted to make sure we were clear on that. Okay, thank you, and I apologize for the long meeting, but it was really worthwhile.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry, I'm just communicating about the time.
Oh, no, that's not. Okay.